Becky from the Montgomery County Norristown Public Library. And fall, now that we're in fall, is the perfect time to make some things with apples. So today we're going to make some apple crisp, which is a baked dessert with sliced apples on the bottom of your baking pan, and then you top it with a crumbly oatmeal, butter, brown sugar, delicious goodness topping over top of that. And it's really good with served warm with vanilla ice cream or heavy cream or half and half, whipped cream, or if you're like my husband and drown everything in milk, you could do that too. Or you can just eat it plain, straight. It's delicious, whatever you do to it. So I'm going to show you all of the ingredients you need and all of the equipment you need to make this lovely fall dessert. Of course, the first thing you're going to need are apples. And you're going to need about 4 medium-sized ones. I have 2 kind of large ones back there. These are more medium-sized. I can show you by how they fit in my hand. This one really fills my hand. This one just kind of sort of fills my hand. So anyway, you're going to end up with about 4 cups of apples when you're done. You will need some flour and some oatmeal. These are the rolled oats, not the instant oatmeal that you get in packets. This usually comes in a canister with a Quaker man on the front. I get mine from Aldi because it's cheaper. You need some brown sugar and some flour and some cinnamon and nutmeg, and you'll need some butter. So if you don't have butter, if you have margarine, pretty much all you need it for is to make the topping a little crispy, give it some good flavor. So those are all the ingredients you need, and the supplies you're going to need are, you'll need a mixing bowl, you'll need not that, you'll need a peeler, and peelers come in many different varieties. This one has a swivel head. You might have a metal one like this, that the top kind of swivels like that. Or you might have a stationary one like this. Or you may have one kind of lethal looking one like this. And this part actually can core an apple. You stick it down through the middle and turn it. And I'll demonstrate that later in case you just happen to have one of these in your house. So you'll need a peeler. You don't need a variety like I have. I'm just crazy with the kitchen utensils. You need a paring knife or a chopping knife of some sort to slice the apples. You will need a half cup measure. Make sure it's this kind of cup and not the glass or plastic kind with the handle that you measure liquids with. And this is a 1/4 cup. So you need half and a 1/4 cup, and you need a 1/2 teaspoon and a 1/4 teaspoon. And you need a cutting board would be helpful. Cutting board. And you'll need a dish, a baking dish. The recipe calls for an 8" by 8". This one's 9" by 9", so it's a little bit too big. I'm going to use a regular casserole dish. I think if you use one that's like 1½ quarts, sometimes it'll tell you somewhere on the dish what it holds. And this one I thought did, but I guess not. Sometimes on the bottom it'll tell you how big it is, what it holds. But this is just a casserole dish. It's slightly smaller in dimension to the 9 by 9 pan, so I'm going to use this. And if you don't have a square pan, if you have a round pie pan or a cake pan, you could use something like that. The bigger your pan is at the bottom, the more your apples will spread out and your toppings will spread out. So it'll look like you have more, but it won't be as deep. And conversely, if you have a smaller dish, your apples are going to be deeper, your topping is going to be deeper, but it'll look like you have less of it. So you can work with whatever you got, and it'll be fine. It'll be delicious no matter what you do. So before we start, let's talk about a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, you want to clean your work surfaces. You can use ordinary hot water and dish soap and a clean dishcloth and just wipe whatever tabletop or countertop surface that you're going to be using. Make sure you wash your hands. Make sure if you're wearing long sleeves that you roll them up so they don't get in your food. If you have long hair, tie it back or pull it back from your face so you don't have to keep fiddling with it while you're cooking. Get rid of any dangly jewelry or bracelets or anything that might fall into your food or keep you messing with it. You don't want to touch anything but the food with your hands. If your nose itches, use the back of your hand or your arm, sneeze or cough into your elbow. Basically, your coronavirus rules for keeping yourself safe from germs applies in the kitchen. I'm not going to make you wear a mask. Don't worry. You're in your safety of your own home, I hope. So just keep your hands clean. If you do happen to touch your face or anything that's non-food related, you should wash your hands. It never hurts to wash your hands. There are germs that are in food as well as in the air, so we want to make sure we're not passing those germs around and making people sick. So the first thing we're going to do is peel the apples, but before we do that, I always like to rinse the apples off before I peel them, just to make sure I'm not dragging any contaminants into my baked goods. So just, give them a good rinse off. And I know we're going to peel them, but I just like to start with clean things. So just give them a little bit of a rinse. Just make sure all the sticky stuff is washed away. Alright. Now that's done. Also, before you do anything with the apples, we need to grease our baking pan. I'm going to use some spray oil. If you have shortening, butter, lard, or you can even take some liquid oil, cooking oil, and pour a little bit on a paper towel and rub it around. Just anything with oil in it that'll keep the contents from sticking fast when you go to take it out, and it really helps with the cleanup afterward. And we're going to preheat our oven to 375. Get that warming up there while you mix together your ingredients. So now we're going to peel the apples, and this is kind of a tricky part. Make sure your grown-up is with you while you're doing this, because I wouldn't want you to have a mishap and, get injured. But, okay, so you have your peeler, you have your apple, and you just kind of dig in there. I kind of hold the peeler like this in these fingers, place my thumb, and then just sort of use my thumb to steady my hand, and I just bring the peeler toward my thumb. And you can just keep going around. There used to be an old wives' tale that if you could completely peel an apple without breaking the peel, if you had the complete peel in one piece, when you were done, you throw the peel over your shoulder and let it hang there, and whatever the initial is that you see in your peel is the initial of the person you're going to marry. So mine is just kind of, it might be like a J. I guess that you'd probably end up with J's or S's. I don't think there'd be any K's or L's or any angular letters there. But, so this is peeled. I missed it a little bit here. And actually the peel won't hurt you. And you may want to keep the peel on if you like to have the extra fiber from the peels. And I just take a little bit more off the bottom and the top. Okay, so that one's peeled. We'll just go through the rest of these up. Not going to get my initial there. And there are different kinds of apples. You may have noticed in the grocery store that there are green ones and yellow ones and red and green ones. And they're all different as far as their texture. Some are kind of soft and mushy, and some are really crisp. Some are very sweet, some are sour, some are tart. And it's good to know your apple varieties so you know what works best for what you're making. The soft apples like Macintosh and Delicious, Red Delicious, are kind of mealy and soft, and they're the best kind for stuff like applesauce or apple butter if you're so inclined to make something like that. Apple butter is like very well-cooked applesauce with a lot of spices and sugar in it, and you use it like a jelly. Anyway, so soft, mushy apples are best for soft, mushy foods, and the harder, crisper apples hold up better for things like pies and crisps and anything where you want your apple to keep its shape, even baked apples, which I almost showed us how to do that, because it's basically just taking the core out of the middle of your apple and filling it with brown sugar and vanilla and butter and baking it. And that's a really easy thing that you can do with apples too. And maybe I'll just stick that in at the end, how you can make that. Anyway, so almost done here. The apples I have here, I have two, what the heck are they? Pink Lady, which are, they're a crisp sort of tart apple, and then two are Fuji, which are also pink. These are Pink Ladies, these are Fuji, these are also crisp apple. The recipe calls for a tart apple. If you like really tart apples, Granny Smith, the green apple, is tart. It's not very sweet, and it's a good combination with the sweetness of the topping that goes on this. So some people like that contrast of the tart apple and the very, very sweet topping. But these are going to be a little bit sweeter because that's what I have in my cupboard. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to slice this. And this is exactly where you need your grown-up to help you. I have every faith that you can handle this, but I would feel better if you were right in front of me instead of on the other side of the video screen where I can't see you. So you're going to cut the apple in half, and whenever you're cutting anything, you make your hand into a claw hand and put it on the piece of food you're cutting. And the reason you curl your fingers like this is so that you don't cut them off. If you have them curled like this, if your knife accidentally slips, it's not going to cut anything. It's just going to butt up against your knuckles. So you want to hold anything you cut like this. And we're just going to cut right down through the middle. Now this is the way I grew up learning how to cut an apple. And you know how my grandmother and my mother taught me. And I will show you the way they taught me in cooking school. So then I cut into quarters. And there you have a little math. You had a whole, and then you had 2 halves, and now you have 4 quarters, and that all equals 1. Haha. So now this is how I cut them, and again, I hold my knife with these fingers, kind of rest the blade on my index finger, and I use my thumb as the guide, and I bring the knife gently toward me and cut out. And if you do it gently, you can put the knife blade up against your thumb and not cut it off. So this is the way my grandmother and my mother always did it, and how I do it, and how I was doing it in cooking school, and my instructor said, oh, there's a better way to do that, a quicker way to do that, because when you're in a restaurant situation, it's all about being quick. This is what's comfortable to me because I grew up with it. But, so, oven's ready. That's what that beeping means. So I just go in on one side, whoop, and then kind of cut that little piece of skin away, and then come in the other side. And then my core is gone. And then you can just cut slices, and you want about 1/4 of an inch or so. You want them kind of thin. And we're just going to dump those in our dish. So this is one way you can cut your apples. I'm going to show you the way I was taught in cooking school. I think it's kind of wasteful, but that's the way it is in restaurants. Sometimes fast means wasteful, and it's kind of a sad thing. But so anyway, so in cooking school, they taught me to cut an edge off, and then you cut around. And if you have a big chopping knife, this works better than a paring knife. And you just cut the edges off around the core. So look at that. Look at all that waste that we lost by doing it that way. But it's a lot easier, a lot faster. Just pull off any... This had a little bruise on it, so just... And then slicey dicey. It seems like you get more slices, but whatever. Oh, I got a little bit of the core stuck on there, so I'm just going to pull that off. And that's another thing you got to watch for when you do that. See how I kind of chopped into the core a little bit when I did that. So it really doesn't matter too much. I'm just going to leave that like that. Doesn't matter too much how you slice it, as long as you slice it and you make sure there is no peel or no core in there. So now I'm going to show you how to use this bad boy. And this, you just kind of look where your top and bottom are. Sometimes the core is a little crooked, so you just have to keep that in mind. And you just sort of, it's kind of tough. Oh, and I missed a little bit. And then you, sure you do. You can go down the other way and sort of twist it around and bring the core out like that. I did miss a little bit, so you can just go in and sort of scrape that out. Oh, there's a little bit inside there. You can see a seed. Come out. Come out. And I have a little ring of peel there. Peel's not going to hurt you, but you may not like to have that texture in something you're baking. Okay, so there, my core is gone, so I can just put down through like that, and I can just slice like this. One side done. And then I'm going to do this again. Maybe. This one's a little big, so I may have to do one end and then the other end. And this is sharp, so you have to be careful that you get it in. And see how it looks. Oh, we missed some in the middle. Pull that out. Oh, well, that's on the floor. Get that later, as well as that. Okay, so now we're gonna cut this in half again, just like that. We get all the innards. I think we did. So a little bit of something right there. I'll get rid of little brown spots here, and then get rid of those seeds. And then we're going to slice it up again. Make sure you have your claw hands. And I kind of, when it starts to get short like that, I kind of flip it around so I do it this way. Oh, don't you go on the floor. One more. Okay, there we go. I seem to have a lot of apples in here. Put this out of the way. Put this over here so you can see all our lovely apples. And you can kind of shuffle them like that a little bit to get them settled in there. Because we do need some room on top for the luscious topping. Okay. So that part's done. Now we're going to mix the topping part. Okay, so we're going to measure the ingredients into the bowl. All the remaining ingredients, the flour, we need 1/2 cup. So use a spoon. Don't just stick your cup in there and shovel it out. You want to, see what I'm saying. You want to kind of fluff up your flour and spoon it in to your cup all the way to the top, and then scrape it off even, level as you can get here. And this recipe, because it's not relying so much on chemical reactions here, if you're a little off with your measurements, it's not going to make a big deal. If you are making bread or cake or cookies, where a certain amount of a certain ingredient creates a chemical reaction that makes a desired effect, like leavening, which is like baking powder, baking soda, that makes your cakes rise or your cookies rise, or sugar that creates a certain chemical reaction. You want to be more exact with those measurements, but for something like this topping, where it's just gonna, the butter's just gonna melt and the sugar's just gonna caramelize, and it's just gonna make this lovely crispy topping. If you're a little bit off in your measurements, it's not gonna be a big deal. I mean, don't be too, actually. I should just scoop in here. It's okay to scoop up your oats. And these are I think these are the quick cooking kind, the 1 minute oats. It doesn't really matter if you have the 1 minute oats or the 5 minute oats, but just as long as they're the rolled oats that you cook and not microwave. That was a half cup of flour, half cup of oats. Now we need 3/4 cup of packed brown sugar. And if you know anything about brown sugar, you know it squishes up and packs down. So most of the time when you're cooking with brown sugar, you want to have packed down into the cup. Most other ingredients, you don't want to pack it down, but this you do. Now we need 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar, and you can use light or dark brown, doesn't matter. You could do 3 1/4 cups, but if you want to be a little mathical, you can use a half cup and a 1/4 cup, because a half cup is equal to 2/4. 1/2 cup is 2/4. So it helps if you know your fractions. So I kind of just use the side of the bag to squash it down. And then I pull it out and it's already squashed down. So you want it packed. That's 1/2 or 2/4. And then the 3/4 is with the 1/4 cup. And I'm just going to level it off inside the bag. And then you don't have that mess all outside. So there's our 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. Now we need, what is it, 3/4 of a cup of each of our spices. 3/4 of a cup, my goodness, that would be terrible. Teaspoon. So again, we have a half and we have a 1/4. So the half would be like 2/4 plus 1 is 3/4. So we need 3/4. So I'm going to do half. And you want to level that spoon off, dump it in there, and then level this, dump it in there. That's our cinnamon. That smells like fall. And then the nutmeg is the same. So we have 1/2 and 1/4 or 3/4 of the nutmeg. Okay, we got that all in there. I'm just going to take a fork and just sort of kind of mix that all together there. Make a homogeneous mix. All the ingredients are kind of spread around and smush out the lumps in your brown sugar. I can come closer here so you can see what I'm doing. Kind of stir that. Ooh, that smells so fallish. Okay. Now we're going to add the butter to this. Now, you want your butter softened to room temperature, and that's pretty soft. Now, we need 1/3 of a cup, and on, I don't know if you can see this, on your butter stick or margarine stick, it gives you measurements like 4 tablespoons is a 1/4 cup, 8 tablespoons is a 1/2 cup, etc. So here it says 5 1/3 tablespoons equals 1/3 cup. Like I said before, this recipe is pretty forgiving if you're off a little bit on your ingredients. So if we're not exactly 1/3 cup, I don't think it's going to make such a big difference. But we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then cut that into 1/3. I already marked that there a little bit. So I'm just going to take my knife and cut it. That looks pretty much like 1/3. And just even cut down through the paper and everything. Just cut that off. And there's our butter. Now, this is the fun part. If you don't have the stick butter, but you have spreadable margarine like this, I don't really recommend that you use it because a big part of the ingredients, like the very first ingredient on the ingredient list, is water. So that means you're not going to get the same consistency of your topping as if you use stick butter or stick margarine, because a larger percentage of that is fat. And I understand people like to not have so much fat, so you can use this kind. It just might not turn out as crispy, crunchy as you'd like it to be. But if you do use this kind, you need to use a measuring cup and just use your regular 1/3 of a cup, you know, and measure it in there and level it off and use that for your butter. But as I said, I really recommend the stick butter or stick margarine. You'll have a better result from that. I'm going to take my fork and sort of mash this down in. It's probably not quite as soft as I would have liked to have it, but it's soft enough, and you need to be able to squash it. And, you know, if you want to cut it into pieces before you put it in the bowl, that makes this a little bit easier too. So what I do, and you can keep mashing at it with a fork or spoon or whatever, trying to get this all incorporated, but I usually just kind of use my hands, kind of rub the butter into the dry ingredients and kind of just work it till everything is combined. I'm gonna move a little bit. And it does get sticky on your fingers, but rub them off like that. Come on, little chunks. Work in there. I didn't realize when I was mixing the butter in with the rest of the ingredients that my phone just decided to stop recording. And I went through and completed the entire recipe without you being able to see what to do after we mixed all the butter into the brown sugar and flour and oat mixture. So what you need to do, I have to tell you because I can't show you anymore, is to make sure that your butter is mixed in evenly. You have sort of a crumbly mixture. There's no big lumps in there. And then you just pour that out on top of the apples in the dish and just spread it around until it's evenly covered. And you want to just make sure the whole top is even. And then we'll proceed from there. Sorry about that. Technology. So now we put it in the oven. The oven is set 375. And stick it in there. And we're going to set the timer for 30 minutes. If your stove doesn't have a timer, you can set your cell phone, probably has a timer, or you may have a little device that you can turn the dial to 30 and then it dings when it's done. So however you can remember to come back at 30 minutes, do that. Okay, my timer went off. So we're going to check and see if this is ready to come out. Oh, baby. Look at that. Ooh, hear that? Sizzle in there. We're going to let that sit and cool off a little bit because we don't want to scorch our mouths and, you know, kill our taste buds because this is going to be delicious. So let's just let that cool off for maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes. See how hot it is when we come back. Okay, so here we have our beautiful apple crisp. I'm just going to take a little bit out of here See how it turned out. My plate over here. You see there's the apples on the bottom, nice and cooked. It's a little bit juicy down there. And so I just want to get all the apples in there. Okay. Look at that, look at that, look at that. Look at all that crispy, crunchy goodness. Let's see how it turned out. Apple. Ah, can't get it all on my fork. Everything I want here. Alright. Let's see how this is. That is really, really good. A little vanilla ice cream on there would be really, really tasty. That's my lunch. And it's really, really good. The apples are not too sweet. They're sweet enough. The topping is sweet. So even though the apples aren't that sweet, you don't mind it because this part is sweet. So, really tasty. I wouldn't change a thing. But if you find that you don't like the flavors of the spices, maybe you don't like nutmeg so much, you can cut back on that. Add more cinnamon, cut back on the cinnamon. You think it's too sweet? You could probably cut maybe 1/4 cup of brown sugar out of this, out of the topping. But, so, you know, try it out, play with it, and get it how you like it. And enjoy your fall apple crisp recipe.